Marketer of the Day, number 439. Grow your business using project management software, systems, flow, documentation, and troubleshooting with Bryan Weinert. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening. We're talking right now with Bryan Weinert, and Bryan is the founding partner of Incipient. And Bryan oversees product strategy, implementation, and client relations while spearheading an adept team that is determined to push the envelope in custom software technology. From funded startups to large-scale enterprise solutions in finance, healthcare, pharmaceutical, and supply chain management industries, his foolproof solutions have benefited a wide range of clientele. So, Bryan, glad to be talking to you right now.
Thanks for having me, Robert.
Glad to have you. So, can you tell us about what your company is and what it does exactly?
Yeah, I would love to. So my company is Incipient. I'm partners with Amit Shah. We started our company about 6.5, 7 years ago at this point, early on in high school. And what we are is we are a product development and growth company that leverages, creative technology solutions. So essentially what that means, down at a bare bones is we work with clients from a conceptual phase when they start with just an idea to develop a new technological product, whether it can be a logistics system for their company, a startup that has a disruptive idea, or a local business that's looking to improve efficiencies within their supply chain. We work with them to understand their business goals and clearly articulate those into technical requirements to build the product that they envision.
Super awesome. So I have to admit that I don't have any kind of a business background whatsoever, but there are times in my business where I do need to have like these processes, or I do need to, have like a person to do this thing and something in place just to make sure that that gets checked on. So I don't know a lot. So I'm curious about, so what exactly is some of this stuff, like these systems and these chain things and all that?
Yeah, of course. I'd love to dig in a bit more. So, typically when working with some of the smaller businesses, right, or even businesses that are experiencing good growth and looking to automate more processes, right? Where did that file go? Why did someone else upload it somewhere else? Is that work done? And have all of these questions be answered, right, without actually having to communicate with people. So one of the tools that we've used a lot recently is Microsoft Dynamics, and similar to some problems that you might have, Robert, with a podcast, right? Where are the edited files? What's the imagery that has to go up with the podcast? When's the release date, right? There's ways to essentially audit the way that you complete that workflow process right now. And based on that flow, be able to identify ways in which we can implement technology to automate some of those processes. For example, if you complete this right now, right, it zips up and you happen to send it to someone to get edited, or send my information to get image post created, or whatever it may be, similar to what I would do on my end, right? We can have those change of commands happen automatically once you just upload the file. And using Microsoft Dynamics, it lets us dictate, who we're sending the information to, through what medium, right? Do we have to use Dropbox and things like that, or Slack channels? And essentially what we aim to do is identify the best way to automate the workflow without reconstructing the whole thing, right? Or making them switch technologies, because from that point, then they have to re-educate anyone on their team that's using them.
Okay, gotcha. So basically, in other words, like, we might be doing things, and anyone who's listening in like any business they have, they might be doing things already, but maybe kind of just winging it, or doing these tasks without a plan, or things not being consistent. And so what I'm hearing from you is, don't just throw it all out and try to do it with different tools. Keep doing it the same way you're doing it, but maybe document and step by step what you're doing, so that way there's a way to track and see what that flow is and see if we can make that better. Is that on the right track?
Yeah, it's pretty close. I mean, pretty much with any business, a lot of our initial processes, right, they're all good processes, but the issue comes with scalability, right? When you really start to pump some traffic into those processes and start to bring out the inefficiencies that may lie in some smaller man teams, or just in a process that gets a lot of volume. Right. For instance, one of our recent customers has been a mechanic for 10 to 15 years, owns his own shop, and works with dealerships. one of their biggest pain points is retrieving inaccurate information from people when they're trying to diagnose a car problem, right? Outside of our standard oil changes, wheel rotations, and windshield wiper changes, when we have a real problem, it's the same as not being technical. None of us really know how to describe if it's a bearing problem, right? Or if it's the water pump. All we know is the noise is coming from the front left when I drive at 30, right? So the process that existed right now, or currently, was there was a consultant as a middleman, and that customer would call into that person. That person would ask an exhaustive 30 question questionnaire, right? Which, if either one of us have ever been to the doctor's office and we just have to fill out that basic information, we know how tiring that process is and how lazy we get with providing accurate information.
Oh yeah.
So what we seek to do is identify how can we automate this process, building relationships between the questions so that you don't ask questions that, based on how they answered a previous one, right, there's no reason to ask that question. For instance, when they're trying to identify a problem in the rear of the car, there's a question that asks, are there items in the trunk, right, as silly as that may be. And then if they answer yes to that question, right, then the follow-up question is, once you remove those items from the trunk, does the sound stop, right, as silly as that is. And then if they say yes, right, now there's no more reason to ask them the following 10 questions because we identified the source of the problem, right? We're online and over the phone, someone just drilling through all the questions, then they just send that over to the shop no matter what. So we're seeking to identify two problem areas, right? One, sending people over who don't really have a real problem, and two, ensuring that we send over the most accurate data through our product. So hopefully that gives a bit more insight into, how you can take any process that you see as inefficient and look to identify ways to improve it through technology.
And that is super interesting. I mean, it's like you've kind of taken what would be a boring subject but made it interesting by like kind of diving deep into some of these things. And what I'm hearing is that like maybe there are these inefficiencies, and maybe they're on the communication with the customer, and like maybe it helps to have this flow chart or the set of usual responses or normal things to look for. And there's that part of it, and then maybe it's even to save a lot of work on the team members and on the employee end of, if a customer says in this case, like, well, there's this problem with the trunk, and this saves the mechanic, like, taking a bunch of stuff apart and spending a day on it when it could have just been solved in 10 seconds. And what it reminds me of, Mr. Bryan, is I was driving my car down some like hilly roads like years and years ago, and every time
Yeah.
I went over a hill, then like the dashboard and everything would like be beeping a bunch, and I was going through on the freeway, and there's just all these beeping, and I was really freaked out, and I had the person in the passenger seat call up the car dealership and be like, yeah, like the car keeps beeping, any ideas? And they didn't know, and then we pulled over, and it turned out that it was a Ford Mustang, and it was one of these trunks where like the trunk, you could close it, but unless you slammed it, it didn't close all the way.
Yep.
So whenever we went over a hill, like the trunk opened up like an inch, enough to make the thing beep. And the dealership, I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one with that problem, but if they had maybe, I mean, what could they have done in that situation? Could they have like kept a log of those sorts of questions and maybe like kept a total of what are the most common things, or like what could they have done in that sort of situation to be more efficient?
Exactly, yeah, and that's where it comes in, and you kind of got into the second phase of our client's product. So what we'll do is we would build a library, right, of all these different questionnaires, and based on how the mechanic said he fixed the problem, right, based on those questionnaire responses, in the future we would be able to provide the customer, right, with some initial tests that they can complete before bringing their car to the dealership, based on how we know maybe 30 or 40 previous people that reported a similar sound in a similar area, right, how that mechanic fixed that issue if it didn't involve, mechanical labor that involves his expertise, right? So for the business, yes, of course, having a log, right, of having these issues. Unfortunately, for a lot of these businesses, they have call centers, right? They have some sort of a system or a glossary, right? But most likely it's more of a glorified user manual from the car that people can search quickly, right? There's no machine learning being involved, and there's no relationships being built. And until you have your data in a database, right, where you can begin to build these relationships, those manual processes will always kind of have that ceiling, right, of automation. And maybe you have that one caller on your team that's fielded so many calls that he knows the answer, right? But then for the other three guys that are brand new, they're not going to know that. And that's where we look to implement technology, right? One, for efficiency and also for consistency, and being able to build relationships over time and never let go of that data really continues to drive that efficiency within the clients and their businesses that we work with.
Super awesome. And that example that you mentioned in there of maybe having the one person that like has done it long enough where like they know their stuff, and then the other ones that aren't quite caught up. It sounds like that sort of situation would be kind of frustrating, and maybe sort of just good enough but not great, and maybe in a kind of situation where the person that has been around long enough to figure things out through trial and error, it's like it seems like that would take a long time, and people might be tempted to hang on to that person because it's like, well, we went through all this work just to get this one person up to speed. But then it sounds like then the business would rely on this one person, and if that person were to quit or get lazy or something, then now they're pulling things down with them. And it sounds like that's a big kind of motivator into doing this kind of thing. But I can imagine that maybe at first this sort of thing seems tedious to do, to like, figure out these metrics or figure out these questionnaire sort of stuff. So do you have any advice for someone of like a business of any size who's like resisting this idea of looking at the pain points? And what would you say to them if they were saying, oh, well, it's really tedious, it's a waste of time?
Yeah, so that's where, we really come in with a lot of businesses, right? Because they know that they can identify the clear problem, right? I have an inefficiency in reporting accurate data to people calling in because I only have one great call guy and the other ones are so new that it's going to take them 3 months to know all these problems, right? That could be our problem statement here. So what we look to do is we look to work with the client to kind of do all that tedious work from them. But if you're looking to identify some initial weaknesses in any processes or routines or habits that you have daily, right, a great way is just to do a very high level document of that process. For instance, in your scenario, right, Robert, what does that flow look like, right? Someone called in, they got John. John didn't know the answer to the question. Does that mean now you have two answers, right? John either hangs up on that person saying, sorry, I don't know the answer, or John tries to redirect to someone else that might be more experienced, right? Maybe they have a senior operator on the floor at all times that knows all the answers, and they hope that the five newer guys cover at least 60% of the questions, right? And then from there, they redirect to him. So the biggest way to identify these flaws is just documenting the process. And a lot of us are so ingrained in our daily processes that we don't even see the gaps until we actually put it on paper. So that's typically a great place to start. Then as it gets more granular on the technology side, that's typically a gap, and where we look to work with those experienced within their industry and with their problem to bring our technology experience to bring a level playing field, right, and help them build the solution that they're envisioning.
And all of this sounds like if people it sounds like people really need to hear or have this like outside set of eyes, because it seems to me that maybe if people are too used to their business or too used to what they're doing, maybe the ego gets in the way, and people could be thinking that they're the only ones that can do it, or need to be a control freak, or they can't really slow down and explain these things like you said in that high level document, or figuring out what the step by step is. So I mean, is that right? Is it really help quite a bit to have an outside party like yourself to be on the outside looking in from a fresh perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that way even within my own business, right? As humans, we're all creatures of habit, especially when habits are bringing good returns, right? And maybe some initial profitability or new customers from marketing, right? Or whatever you may be trying. But just because you're getting a return doesn't mean it's the return, right, that you should be getting. So yeah, outside parties, reflection's key in any business. For any business owner on a monthly basis, you should have some processes that allow you to reflect on your progress, right? And identify some trouble areas. Are you spending too much on traveling and trips and things like that, that it's pulling away from budgets for marketing or some other areas like this? That reflection is important. If you're someone that's always on the go within your business, right, and likes to be the hands-on leader, right, and owner, then it's very critical that you either identify someone within your business that can help with these, right, and be your second set of eyes, or again, go external, right, because it's always easier from for someone on the outside with no preconceived expectations to offer up some advice than anyone that's involved and might want to tell you what you want to hear.
Okay. Well, one thing that I'm curious about is, so we have a lot of people listening to the show who are sort of work at home entrepreneurs. Maybe it's just them, or maybe they have just a really small team. But I can imagine that a lot of people are listening and they're saying, well, it's great that, to have this process if you're like a podcaster or a mechanic or some big company or things like that. But do you have any ideas for anyone out there who's maybe they're working from home, they have some websites, they have some customers? I mean, where should they start looking into some of these things? Should they look to should they look for like their strengths or their weaknesses? Should they be looking at what frustrates them the most or what they want to do more of? Like, kind of, where's the starting point? Where should people be looking to get more efficiency?
Yeah, I think the number one place people should look is time, right? Wherever you're spending the most time, whether it's a strength or a weakness to start, right? Then there's typically an area that can be alleviated there unless it's revenue driving all the time, right? So Robert, in your example, let's say we've got some, great at-home web developers. Maybe they have 15 to 20 clients of, local websites, the e-commerce platforms, anything like that, right? Currently, if they're the only person managing and monitoring all those sites, or maybe they have a one or two man team assisting them, right? They're still putting a lot of time and money into just monitoring those sites, where you could build a very simple application that aggregates the web traffic in from all of those sites and gives you a notification to your phone on any critical issues, right? So now you no longer have to be on standby, sitting there waiting for the problem to happen, right, or for one of your team members to inform you, but instead, you can put maybe your team from a full-time to a part-time on a maintenance side and only be ready for critical issues, right? And kind of get some more elements back in your personal life, right, to enjoy where you're not monitoring your clients, or identify more ways to bring value to your clients outside of just a support model. That's just a very small and off-the-cuff example, but simply look at the areas where you're spending a lot of time and identify, is it process oriented, or is it just because you're a one-man show? And from there, you can either increase that by implementing technology or finding other people that can, help grow your team and your company.
I love it. So, great place to start there, as far as like if we want to free up more time, get that automated process, or get that other team member to do it. So that way we have that time freed up to do more cool and fun stuff. And so with someone, first of all, if someone's listening to our episode today, which they are if they got to this point, and they say, all right, well, I really like this guy Bryan's ideas in his company, how do they know if they're a good fit for you?
I would simply say reach out, and if we're not a good fit, I'll help you find the right one. We work, like you kind of mentioned in the beginning for me, Robert. Thank you. We work across a lot of different industries. Being a product strategy, right, and growth company, we don't look to confine ourselves to a particular product, industry, or use case, right? We look to bring the most value where we know we can make an impact, understanding from that business expert, right, what their needs and challenges are, and using our experiences to bring value and help them achieve the vision they're trying to, right? If it's something deeply complex that we haven't done, or a smaller project or industry we're not very familiar with, then we would always help them find the right way. But the best way is to reach out, and I'd love to hear your idea and help you troubleshoot whatever your problem may be.
Fantastic. So, any guidelines on what they should be telling you specifically? Like, I know you mentioned a little bit that maybe they should talk about their company, or maybe any like problems or challenges they've been having, but anything like specific, like a simple question they should be answering for you?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing is, what is the problem? Once you've identified that, and you should be able to articulate it in one sentence, right, that's clear and concise to anyone, then from there, we can help you identify what possible solutions are. So simply, if you can come up with, a 1 to 2 sentence, clear, concise problem that you're engaging, and send that, then that's a great place for us to start.
Awesome. So, this would be something like, maybe I'm spending too much time checking to see if these client websites are online, or I'm not having the customer satisfaction as a mechanic as much as I would like, or something like that.
Exactly. Yep. And then from there, we can help dig into, what are the real roots of that high level problem, right? Are you not having enough time because you have 17 tabs up on your computer and you're watching each server site individually, right? Do you not have enough time from a mechanic perspective or a satisfaction perspective, right? Because you don't know how to fix some of the problems and you need that information? Or is it because the customers aren't giving you the proper information to identify the problem? So quickly getting into those questions afterwards allows us to get to that root cause.
Super awesome. I love your thought process, and it sounds like a lot of this comes down to taking something that we thought was a big chaotic mess and then abstracting it into things we're measuring or rules or seeing like how things move along in the process. So it's a great kind of new way of thinking. So if people say, all right, this sounds great, I want to go and reach out to Incipient and see if they can help me and explain to them my problem. And like you said, even if you guys can't help, you can refer to whoever. So where can and where should people go to reach out to you guys?
Yeah. So our website is one of the best routes. It's Incipient. That's INCIPIENT Corp.com. As for social media, it's going to be the handle at Incipient Corp. So feel free to reach out to us on any of those means, and myself or one of our team members will get back to you right away.
Fantastic. And can you spell Incipient for us real quick?
Yep. It's INCIPIENT.
Super great. So make sure you guys have that written down. We'll have the link in the show notes as well. IncipientCorp.com and Incipient Corp on social media. It can't hurt to reach out and just send this quick message to, I mean, first of all, stating the problem that you have, that in itself helps you because it kind of gets the problem out on paper and it makes you clear about what you're trying to do, but also it gets it out there, and then Bryan and his team will respond back to you and let you know what you need to know if the next step is going over somewhere else or scheduling a call or getting more information or whatever it is. But now you're getting the ball rolling, so don't wait, do it right now. Go to incipientcorp.com, reach out to them, let them know what, in one sentence, what your business struggles are, and then see if they can help you and see if things are a good fit. Get that relationship moving forward. So thanks so much, Bryan, for stopping by and sharing some of these great case studies and stories and advice. All of it, I love it, and it kind of, I can just tell you like your enthusiasm, and you're enthusiastic, and you always get excited to jump in on some of these different industries where they have good stuff. Just maybe the building blocks need to be rearranged or streamlined a little bit. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your advice, and thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me, Robert. It's been a pleasure.
Want to be a guest on Marketer of the Day? Or can you recommend an author, speaker, coach, or entrepreneur with a great success story and awesome insights? Go to marketeroftheday.com/ask and tell us who you'd like to have on the show. That's marketeroftheday.com/ask.